Hi, my name is James, and this is a Cardano starter kit. Thanks for checking it out. I'm excited to be back making some starter kits. A lot of my attention the last few weeks has been on synchronous time, teaching live developer courses, having a lot of meetings with people and figuring out exactly how we want to go about things at Gimbal Labs. Long story short, I hope that this starter kit is a reflection of some of the things we've learned about how we're going to operate and about how asynchronous materials like the video you're watching right now and like the documentation I'm going to share with you, how this sort of thing can support people like you to get involved and to continue along your journey. We're going to say more about this in weekly updates, but really I want to focus on the starter kit itself. So let's jump right in. This is the new Gimbal Labs homepage, and if you scroll to the bottom, there's a link directly to all of the starter kits that have been published so far. By the time you watch this video, this page might be a little bit more styled and cleaned up. But let's jump into starter kit number 6, which is what we're going to work on today. Now, as I record this, the date is March 2nd, 2021, and just last night, the Mary era went live on Cardano mainnet. That means that, first of all, we all now have access to tokens, and it means that the countdown has begun to the rollout of full smart contracts on Cardano. The next few months are going to be such a great opportunity to practice building things, testing ideas, so that we are ready for the full rollout of Goguen. Now, I get a lot of questions about learning Plutus and Haskell and Marlowe, and all of those things are absolutely essential. We're going to learn those over time. But it's also important to recognize that the two layers that are now on mainnet, metadata and native assets, allow us to do a lot of things. So for this starter kit, I really want to focus on metadata, what it is, how to use it, how to post it, and to give you a few ideas for what to do next. Then soon we can follow up with tokens. And then we're really going to start getting ready for the full, the full suite of tools that we're going to be using by the time Goguen is fully rolled out. Okay? But it's impossible to overstate how important it is for you to recognize that there is stuff we can do right now, and there's plenty that we can be learning. And we don't just have to wait for these languages that we're really excited to get our hands on. All right, so the name of this starter kit is What Can I Do with Transaction Metadata on Cardano? I want to go through just a quick overview of what metadata is in the first place, what it looks like on the Cardano blockchain, a little background on JSON for anybody who's brand new to development. And then we're going to look at consuming data with some of the Dandelion endpoints that you'll find here on gimbalabs.com. We're going to look at how to post data via Lyft wallet, which is also linked right here. And then I'm going to show you an example by posting all the responses that we got way back in starter kit number 1. So that's how we'll end this video. All right. So yeah, I'm excited to jump in. Let's go for it. So the first question is, what is metadata in the first place? It's really important to understand that metadata is just, you're familiar with it. You see it everywhere. It's just data about stuff. It's data about data. So if I have, this is a can of soup that is found in the cabinet. We're all familiar with nutrition labels and ingredient lists and where this thing was made, and there's a date on the bottom of it. All of that stuff, that's metadata about this can of soup. Books have metadata. Usually it's in the front. In this one, it happens to be in the back. Just publishing data, when it was published, copyright data, who published the book, like an ISBN number, that kind of thing. Okay. Metadata can be captured. A scanner might get you access to some information, right? I'm sure you can list other things. Anything with data about itself, that's That's metadata, okay? Now, getting a little bit more specific, when we're talking about software, there's specific places you're going to see metadata. One example is that on any website, let's go to cardano.org, for example, and open up the developer tools. You know, if you go into the head of any deployed website, you're going to see the word meta somewhere. And there's even a meta tag in HTML that allows you to share all sorts of information about your web app. Now, it's beyond the scope of this starter kit to talk exactly about what's going on here. But the critical thing for you to know is that behind any website that you look at, what you see, there's all sorts of stuff going on in the background about that website, for search engine optimization, what sort of devices you can view it on, where information comes from, goes to, et cetera, okay? A lot going on in the background. And at a very high level, when we talk about metadata, we're talking about this sort of background information. Another thing I could show you is when you open up the information about an image file, right? Any picture you take has metadata attached to it. The date that picture was taken, often the kind of device, the kind of camera you use to take the picture, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So there's more you can learn on that. I encourage you, if you're still wrapping your head around just that broad definition, go take a look. But what we're really here today to talk about is, what does metadata look like on the Cardano blockchain? The first thing to understand is that all metadata is stored in transactions, which really are the basic unit of transaction, right? They're the basic unit of the blockchain. Every transaction that happens sends transactions across the Cardano network, and you may attach metadata to a transaction. If you've never studied the UTXO model, I recommend reading up on it and trying to wrap your head around it. I'm not going to go too deeply into that because that would represent a big detour. But let's be sure to talk about that. If you have specific questions, be sure to reach out, and we'll look at other ways to better understand this idea as time goes by. Bitcoin is also built on the UTXO model, and by the way, you can attach metadata to Bitcoin transactions as well. Now, if you want to just get the initial view, I've linked to this in previous starter kits. I really do recommend reading Alan McSherry's blog post right here, just about the basic background about how metadata works. And then there's a few links here that you can follow through to learn more about what metadata looks like on Cardano. One of these links I've placed directly right here. This is to Cardano wallet on GitHub. Here's a document about TX metadata. And this goes into the types of data that we're allowed to place inside of a transaction. Okay. And, so we can include integers, strings, byte strings, and then lists. Okay. And we're going to talk more about how this is structured. But before we go deeper into this, I want to point out that these are all called JSON representations, right? So if you understand JSON, you're prepared to work with metadata on the blockchain. In case you haven't seen JSON before, that's what I want to cover next. Okay, so before we go a step further, just a quick primer on JSON. This stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and this right here is a JavaScript object. You're going to see these if you look into the documentation at IOHK about metadata. You're going to see this pattern: curly brackets around an object, some sort of key, a colon, and a value. All right. What do we mean by that? Well, let me navigate over to my local development environment because we're going to play around here. And what you'll see on the Gimbal Labs site is that we've prepared some tinkering with metadata resources. And the first part of this playground is just this example JSON file that grabs data locally inside of a file called example JSON, which is open right here. Now I'm storing this JSON right inside of my project. A lot of times when you're building a web app, you're going to be pulling data from elsewhere on the web. That's what APIs do, and we're going to use some of those in just a moment. But first, I just want to show you what this looks like. An object is surrounded by opening and closing curly brackets. And then inside the object, you can have as many as you want key and value pairs, okay? So the key is in blue. Visual Studio Code highlights this for me so it's easy to read. Then you put a colon and you write the value of the data at that key. You separate each key value pair with commas, and then you can use that data inside of your app. Now, this is built on Next.js. Introducing you to Next.js is also beyond the scope of this starter kit, but their documentation is great, and I'm linking to it in the resources for this starter kit. If you've never done any web development, I would love to help you with that. Just be in touch. And if you want to start learning on your own, take a spin through the Next documentation and see how much of it makes sense. Okay, there's a lot of prerequisites you'll need, but I'd be happy to help you with that. Now, to focus on what we're here for today, the key thing I want you to see is that I can pull in the data from that example.json file. I can use Next.js to prepare that data to be used in my app. And then I can just access that data by naming the keys. Remember the names of our keys in this file: title, date, and text. And here they are: title, date, and text. The word data right here is just a variable that I chose on line 6, and then I passed it to this functional component, and now I'm using it. I could replace the word data with anything, and the whole thing would still work. The point is, once this is up and running, right, I don't actually have to touch the app itself to change the information that's formatted on this page. I can actually just go straight into the data. If I want to change the title, JSON is great. Okay. Let's save that. And if I head back over here, it's already rendered. Okay. If I change the text here, the text I render right here will change as well. Let's undo that. Whoops. Here we go. Save again. We're back to where we started. So that's the very basics of what JSON is and how it works. A few other things that we're going to see in just a moment when we start looking at transaction metadata is that you want to be careful making the distinction between arrays, which have square brackets around them, and objects, which have curly brackets. All right. If you have no idea what I'm talking about in those words, this is another thing we can follow up on, or I encourage you to research it on your own. And I'm going to show you in just a minute some illustrated examples of what this means when we go into posting some metadata. But long story short, in JSON, you can have arrays full of objects. You can have an object that has an array as the value of a key value pair. All right. And this gives us a lot of flexibility to structure data and then to make it do what we need it to do. So let's do the fun part. Let's actually get in to some transaction metadata on Cardano. The next thing we're going to do is consume it and put it on a page. And then I'm going to show you how to post it with Lyft Wallet. And then finally, I'll go through a quick example of running both of those steps. All right, first, let's grab some metadata and render it to a page of a simple web app. There's a lot of things I'm going to ignore about authentication and security right now. What I'm trying to do is give you a proof of concept for what this does so that you can have some ideas about what you're actually going to build with it. First of all, we're going to use Dandelion endpoints from right here at Gimbal Labs to grab some metadata. The reason these APIs exist is because setting up a development environment on Cardano takes a few steps, and a few of them take a lot of time. For example, if you want to query the information on Cardano, one way to do that is to set up Cardano DB Sync. No matter how technically skilled you are, setting up DB Sync takes time. All right, it can take more than a day for it to sync up. And just to be clear, what DB Sync is basically a copy of the Cardano blockchain that you can query to see the information on the chain without having to repeatedly ping the chain itself. What we've done with Dandelion is just gone one step further and created, for example, an instance right here of DB Sync that allows us to grab information from it, okay? And we're going to use this we're going to use both of these today, okay? So there's a Cardano REST API that you can read about here, and there is a GraphQL API that we're also going to use. In the playground, like I showed you a few moments ago, we have some resources. We just looked at what's JSON in the first place. Now, when it comes to viewing transaction metadata, we can use PostgREST to grab these endpoints. So right here, and let's actually go into the code for just a moment. So I'm still in metadata. This is the PostgREST example right here. So I'm using next to grab the data from this Dandelion endpoint. Okay. I'm on mainnet, but I could do the same exact thing just by on testnet by replacing the word mainnet right here. And I'm passing just all the data that returns, which in this case, look, I could just take this URL and put it in my browser. This returns an array of objects. Okay, square brackets are an array of comma-separated objects. Each object has one key value pair, key, metadatum, and then a number. These are all the metadata keys that have been used so far on the Cardano blockchain. What I've done here in this playground, and you can look at the code yourself, is just rendered some of the metadata that you return, okay, by clicking on each key. There's a much better version of this similar functionality over at Cent Stake Pool's blockchain intelligence, all right? And I talked about that in the previous starter kit, introducing metadata. This right here is just an accessible chance for you to look at some code to make this happen. So what I've done is, look, let's go back. So this is this page right here with all the keys that we've been used so far. And then this is a dynamic route that grabs whatever ID, right? Once again, I'm using the PostgREST Dandelion endpoint to query for a certain metadata key. And then down here, look, we're saying we're at this key. And then we look at how many transactions have that metadata key on Cardano mainnet. And then we're just grabbing the most recent one. Okay, so look, I said num is all of the data dot length take away 1, which will give us the last entry, the last transaction that has that metadata key. And then we're just stringifying that JSON to post it here. So what you can see when I click, for example, on number 0 is, look, Epic 251. That's the one that started just last night. Somebody posted some metadata here. 1,147 transactions have been posted with this key. And you can poke around. Key number 1, only 163. Somebody's posting some data there. Over here at key 100, this is the raw data for Catalyst Fund 2 winners, right? Now, JSON.stringify, all that does is it takes the raw objects and turns them into text that we can post on the page. This is not very useful, but remember this. We're going to come back to this in just a moment. All I want to do here is show you that this works. And by the way, I showed you how this is a list of all the keys that have been used so far on Cardano mainnet. It still blows my mind how short this list is right now. It's going to be epic someday how much metadata is posted on Cardano. But if I just go back to the app and I switch the word mainnet to testnet and save it, this list changes. These are all the metadata keys that have been used. Oops, and I got to do a little styling there to fit those. But the idea is, right, these are all the metadata keys that have been used so far on testnet. And so the reason I'm showing this to you is just so you know that these Dandelion APIs work on both Cardano mainnet and on testnet. So you can use both, either one you're comfortable with, to do your experiments. And if you want advice, do testnet first. Don't play with real money until you know what you're doing. Okay? So that's PostgREST, and that's useful. But one of the limitations of PostgREST is that it requires us to create separate endpoints for every query that we might have. And there's another tool called GraphQL that allows us to think about data a little bit differently. Now, to be honest, I'm not actually going to show you too much about GraphQL and what it's really useful for. Okay, we're going to build towards that. But for now, I just want to show you that it works and then talk about some of these key ideas. Let's go back to our outline of this starter kit. Okay, this is going to lead us towards some ideas about conditionally rendering via metadata. Okay, so let me just show you an example of this. Back in the playground, we took a look, at all these PostgREST, all the keys delivered via PostgREST. But now here's a little tool I made using GraphQL. Starts out with an error. Obviously, there's still some stuff to build here. But basically, if you type a metadata key in here, okay, look, I'm overwhelming the page a little bit when I press number 1. If you type a metadata key in here, it'll show you the data at that key. Okay, and if there's no data there, it'll say that. But what's cool about this is if I know what data is coming through. Here, look, just another one. Here's Gimbal Labs has been here before. This is just raw data, right? Raw metadata. Look at those square brackets and curly brackets. But if I know what data I'm looking for example, if I type 100, I can conditionally format this to deliver something specific. So in this case, at key 100, which we saw just a moment ago, there's a list of the winners of Catalyst Fund 2. And what I've done here, let's look at the code. Okay. I'm pulling in, this is the GraphQL query right here. I'm using Apollo Client and GQL specifically here. I'm using the Dandelion GraphQL API. And then down here, we bring that metadata in If it's loading, we say it's loading. If there's an error, we say there's an error. But then if the metadata key is a certain one that we expect, then grab a certain transaction. And this one, we want the second one in the array. I'll show you more about this in just a second. And what we can do is we can map the information inside of here. Now, where is all this coming from? Data, transaction, metadata, value, additional information. That's a lot to keep track of. But if you go into the playground, okay, and this link is from right here, our main net, right, that links to the Dandelion GraphQL API. If I look for the metadata where the key is 100, this query is going to return to me the key and the value of everything in there. Press play, and what I can see is in this return data, there are two transactions. There's an array with length 2. So then we have square brackets to represent that array. The first object is here. This is the first metadata that was posted with key number 100. Anthony was explaining how he's going to use it. And then the next transaction, right? This is index 0. This is index 1 of this array. These are the voting results for fund 2. Now, if I go through these results, I can just go down and down and down into these nested pairs of keys and values. So let's look again. What was I looking for? Transactions 1. Yep, we're in the first object. Metadata at index 0. Value, additional information. Metadata. Whoops. Metadata. Okay, the first metadata. So metadata here is an array. The first object here, index 0. The value of that is another object, value. And then we should have a key that says additional information. Here it is. That's also an array, so I ask for index 0. And then inside of there should be a key that says winners. Here it is. And winners is an array as well. Therefore, I can map through it. And for each of those, let me just wrap the text here for a sec. For each of those objects, then we should have a information key and a project name. Information and then project name for each. And if you scroll through here, you're going to see this same data schema for each of the winners. And so it's easy to grab the project name for each one. Here it is, project name, project name. And so because I know what this data looks like, I can choose to render it in a nice way here. Now, I didn't do anything very special here, right? This is just a very simple list, but I could do anything I want. I could add any styles. I could return an entire page with all sorts of static information if there's a certain key that I'm looking for. And then I can just grab the information I want. And here's the kicker. Because this is on the blockchain, because it's on this immutable permanent ledger, I can count on this data still being there at that metadata key and it being at this index of the array returned by that key. Because nobody can insert data at this key ahead of this data on the blockchain, right? Anytime you're going to add more data, it's going to be in a later block. And therefore, we're going to need a successively higher transaction number. So there's a lot that's imperfect here, but I hope you get the idea. The critical idea is that we can call on a certain key, and then we can look for a certain transaction, and then we can use that data. What if we build an authentication layer into this? What if there is a public key attached to one of these transactions, and then if somebody verifies, can verify their access to that key, maybe they can get some special privileges. This is the sort of layer that I think we need to start to build right now. And it's already been done because people have been building stuff like this on Bitcoin. All right. I'm hesitating right now. There's so much to possibly say, but I want to try to say just the right amount to just give you access to this idea. We're going to look at this again at the end of this starter kit when we post some metadata, all right? Or I should say after we post some metadata. But the next thing we got to do is go look at how to actually post that data. Okay, so what about putting metadata on the blockchain? Well, if you know how to use Cardano CLI, you can do it directly there. All right, and I'm going to ignore that in this video because I'm assuming if you know how to do that, you probably didn't need too much of this video in the first place. If you're highly technical and want to learn how to use the blockchain, I strongly recommend setting up your own relay node on Cardano and learning how to use everything that Cardano CLI can do, including building and signing transactions and attaching metadata to them. For the sake of keeping this video brief, I want to show you another way that you can play with this. Okay, so Kyle recently joined the leadership team here at Gimbal Labs. And the reason, the way we got to know Kyle is because he wanted to build, wallets, and he started using the Dandelion endpoints. And you could see the fruits of his labor here. He's released a light wallet called Lyft. Now, right now, Lyft is hard-coded to only be useful on the Cardano testnet. This is a really good thing. So you can go download this and you can safely play around with submitting transactions to the Cardano testnet. If you download this and then reach out to me, I'll be happy to send some test ADA your way, or you can look up how to get test ADA from the faucet. Kyle also creates these coding on chain videos. You'll see Roberto in a lot of these, okay? And I definitely recommend taking a look at this if you want to go deeper than this starter kit into what's going on under the hood. Kyle is showing an awful lot of what you can do without ever touching smart contracts. We don't have Plutus, Marlowe yet, but they're coming. I think that we can better appreciate what those tools are and what they're good for if we make sure to max out our knowledge about metadata and tokens first. And that's the project, right, of the next few months. So if you want to go deeper, check out what Kyle's got right here. Now, I have a special version of Lyft. It looks like this, and this is actually a mainnet version, okay? And I'm going to use this today to post some metadata. You see, I made 2 wallets here. Each one has a couple of ADA inside each because I need to be able to pay for transaction fees. All right. Let's go. What I would like to do today is I'd like to go back to the very first starter kit, where I showed people a little bit about how to use GitHub and then gave people a chance to leave their mark on this test list right here. You scroll through. There's been a bunch of responses over the last few months. Thanks to everybody who posted these responses here. Now, what I've also done is I've grabbed this file and I've reformatted it as JSON. Here it is, okay? So I have an object, right? We've got curly brackets surrounding this entire thing. And then we've got a couple of key value pairs, right? This is just a reminder to everybody to use key value pairs when you're writing JSON. a quick message. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over here and let's just go here. Copy that text. Let's just put that here. I want to be thoughtful about this because this is going to go on the blockchain forever. And let's change this to Gimbal Labs because I really want Gimbal Labs to be at the core. I hadn't even called them Cardano starter kits yet. Okay, let's say, how about this? Welcome to the first ever, thank you for checking out the first ever Cardano starter kit from Gimbal Labs. There's the link. And let's also put a note here called about, where we say participants were able to leave their mark on this CSK. Okay. I hope that's good enough. And I need a comma here to get rid of that error over here. So we've got a link. We've got a little bit about participants were able to leave their mark. Okay. Sorry, I'm probably slowing down too much for the sake of this video here. I just wanted to get that part right. And then here, this is the essential part. This is the key that you see when you go here, for example. Okay, so if you're wondering how you identify what the metadata key is, that's what goes first. Okay, this entire JSON file is going to have one main object in it that's all attached to one key. Now, this could be a really simple object with just one key and one value inside, right? I could delete everything and just leave this line, close the curly brackets down below, and post a message, okay, at this metadata key. Just checking. I want to use today's date, 2021-03-02 is not yet used. So we can post the first ever metadata to 2021-03-02, which represents today's date, with a message that says, thank you for checking out the first ever Cardano starter kit from Gimbal Labs. About participants were able to, let's just say participants left their mark on this CSK via GitHub. Okay, and there's a link. And then look, we've got a list of marks. We got an array of objects, each of which has the date that somebody added that, and then a quote of what they added that day. I need a comma here. And what's cool is that Lyft Wallet won't work. It won't submit this transaction if the formatting is bad. And actually, Juan, I have to cut yours just a little bit because there's a limit to how long these lines can be. So I'm gonna, how's this? Hands-on practice and undivided attention. I agree. We need to be more hands-on. We need to practice, and we need to pay attention to what really matters. Thanks, Juan Sierra. All right. So this looks like it's good to go. I'm going to save this file. Actually, I have questions about whether OCG's characters are going to render here. Let's just see. Let's see if this works. Okay, save that file. Great. Head back over to Lyft Wallet. I'm going to send from my test 1 to test 2. So I need a receiver address. Just copy any of these. Come back over here. And let's send to the address I just copied. Let's send 1 ADA. Okay, there's our total amount. Let's attach this file that we just prepared. password. Hold on. What's the password for this one? Okay. All right. So now I hope that file looks good, because if this works, it's going up indelibly onto the chain. Yeah, let's just go for it. Let's give this a try. If this works, you're going to see the success pretty quickly. If it doesn't work, I'll go back, because it might be because of these characters right here. Let's see. Submit. All right. It's hanging up, and I bet it's because I can't use those characters. Yeah, usually it would have worked already. So okay, I'm going to actually just, this is brand new software, so the best way to stop that process is just to shut it down and open it up again. Let's come in here again. You can see no transaction has gone through today. So let's just try that again. Let me once again paste. I want to go to wallet 2, right? Let me just grab this address. So I want to grab an address from wallet number 2. I want to paste it into wallet number 1. 1 ADA. Password. Shoot, hold on. This one. All right, and let me go back to that file here. Let's just, OCG, we know it's you. Save. Back over here. Load this file up again. Now, I'm thinking this one's going to go right through, and if it doesn't, then I'm going to have to go check some errors. Let's find out. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's my password. I should check that. All right, let me close. Let's just close this again. Let's look closely. We have a key and an object inside. Let me just zoom out so I can see all of this data. Actually, you know what I can do? Is I can, let's just collapse this object, right? So we've got opening and closing curly brackets. That's good. And then we've got a key and a value, which is another object. Inside of that, we've got key, value, comma, key, value, comma, key, value, comma. That's good. And then we've got key and then an array of objects. Each object has a key, a value, 2 pairs. Wonder, I'm just looking for if there's like a missing comma somewhere in here that could make all the difference. I don't see it. All right, so this square bracket represents the end of this array. And we should see 2 curly brackets at the bottom closing that out. And that's exactly what we do see. All right, I'm going to try this one more time. And then I'm going to have to pause this video if it doesn't work this time. Let's go try. Oh, you know what the other thing is? This is the longest one. Is this longer than 64 characters? Ah, you know what? this is what it is. There are 77 characters. So the line limit here is actually 64. Okay, I'm going to keep this video rolling because I think this is the problem. So we need to make sure that every one of these is 64 characters at most. You can't put a string longer than that. That's in the IOHK documentation. So everybody, I'm going to just make, all right, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's make arrays of strings where we need to, because this is the way around this. Okay. So how many characters is this right here? That's 57, so that should be fine. So if I take this, make that the first string, and then I have another string here, that should work. Let's do the same thing here. We're going to make this an array. And I'm just going to make an arbitrary breakpoint here. There we go. 2 strings. All right, how long is this one? That's 52. That's fine. This one looks like it might be too long. 65. It's too long by 1. Okay, so let's do the same thing. Let's make an array. And just split it into 2 strings. And how about this one? 58 characters is fine. Anything shorter than that is fine. This one, 66. We're going to have to break that one apart. Oh, actually, I'm really glad we're doing this. And thanks for being okay with me slowing down a little bit right here. This one, 63, that should fit. So this one's going to be too long. Actually, I should probably go back and get the rest of what Juan wrote so I can put the whole thing in here now that I'm going this direction. Are these too long? Yeah, you know what? All right, I'm just going to skip this link right here. This line is fine. But this string is going to be a little bit too long. Let's just get rid of the message and just say the first ever Cardano starter kit from Gimbal Labs. All right, and then let me go back to GitHub for just a minute. I'm going to get Juan's whole message. I'm going to bring it in and paste it right here. And then let's break this into parts. Okay, so string. And I can see, like, let's make everyone about this long, okay? So, comma. And then let's go like this, maybe. And like this. And finally here. All right, this should fit. All right, thanks for just sticking around. I didn't know this was going to happen. I kind of overlooked this idea about the length of each line. But yeah, basically in Cardano transaction metadata, the longest string you can post is 64 characters. So I'm just curious about whether this one's going to work. Let's give it a try one more time. Okay. All right, open lift again. Pop over to here. Copy a receive address. Go into test 1. Paste it as a send address. We want to send 1 ADA want to attach this file. All right, let's just see. Let's see if this works. That would be a fun troubleshooting that we just did right there. Submit. Look how quick that was. Yep, that's exactly what it was. We had some strings that were too long. All right, excellent. The next thing we're going to do, oh, by the way, look at this transaction fee. It's a little bit higher than the 0.16 that we expected because I just added so much data. All right, so the cost of a metadata transaction has to do with how much data you're adding. All right, we're going to pick this up next by looking at the data that we just posted and then doing some styling on it. Okay, so we've just successfully posted this metadata to the Cardano mainnet on a transaction with this metadata key right here, 2021-0302. Now let's see what we can do with this data. All right, first of all, when I go back to the app, this is the live version of Gimbal Labs. And this has to do with how Next.js renders new data. You can do it client-side or server-side. Here you can see this page is built to be super efficient because we're doing pre-rendering, basically, of this data. I think that's the most essential thing to understand. So this page is not going to update live every time metadata is added. This is a topic that you can go much deeper into if you study Next.js or just event listening in general. So all of those are things that we can cover later. The point is you can't see it here. However, when I go to my development version, my local version, these changes are reflected automatically because when you're developing on Next, everything is rendered. Now you see, I always forget which one's client side and which one's server side. Static. Everything is rendered server side, not statically when you're in a developer environment. So this is statically rendered, and this one is dynamically rendered. But you can see our brand new key right here, 2021-0302. That's the point. If I click into that, here is the data we just posted. Cool, it's up. I hope I didn't mess it up because we sure can't take it down. Now, if I also go, the other way we looked at this a moment ago was back in the playground. We can look at this via GraphQL. So let me start typing this number, 2021-0302. Yeah, there again is our data. But what if I want to do something with this data? All right, just like at key 100, we have some customized formatting specific to this key. What if I want to do the same thing if somebody types in this key? All right, before we do that, let's just review the shape of this data and what it's going to look like. So this is, you can play with GraphQL queries here via Dandelion. And here's the response I get if I search for key 100. But if I query for 2021-0302, here it is, right? Inside the transaction, the first item is metadata. It is this object that has metadata in it. The first transaction, right? So transaction index 0 has this. The metadata in here at metadata index 0 has this object, and this object has everything we posted with this transaction. All right. It's got the key at the top, just like we knew it would, a quick little about, and then it has an array of all the different times that somebody posted data. Some of these sentences that people wrote, the responses they wrote, were longer than 64 characters. And in those cases, we made an array of strings. So what I would like to do, only as a proof of concept, is when the user types this number here, let's render this in a special way. So I'm going to do some live coding here to build this out, and we're going to see if we can get it to work. Now, a lot of what I'm showing you is for proof of concept and just for helping you get ideas. A lot of what we're doing here, you probably wouldn't do it this way in production. For example, if I wanted a page that only served up this data, maybe I would just hard code that that key to right here in my GraphQL query, and I wouldn't have a form, right? However, having the user type this in, this is not security exactly, but there's a certain degree of, I don't know, knowledge or privacy that we're offering here. So again, this is not a real world use case quite, but I hope just the functionality here is helping you think about what it might look like. All right, so let's see. We know that if metadata key 100 pops up, we're going to do something special. If there's no metadata there, you could say there's no data at that key. That's fine. But let's just make a new case here for if metadata key is equal to 2021-0302. Great. If that's the case, we're going to return something. Now, another best practice I'm not following is really what I should probably do right here is create a separate component in a separate file, import it to this index.js right here, and then just write the name of some component right here, right? You could do it like that. But I'm just not going to do that for efficiency's sake, just because I'm working pretty quickly right here. Eventually, we might have a whole bunch of different components that we want to see. And by the time you look at this on GitHub, I might have cleaned this up already. But just for playing around today, I'm just going to do all of this inline, right? Here's my response if metadata key is 100, if it's this date, or everything else. What do I want to do here? Well, I need a container, and I'm going to copy some of what we've already done. So I do want to grab from data that's returned, that's this, and I'm still going to go for the transaction. Look, that's this, right? That's the highest level key inside the data that's been returned. And I do want transaction index 0. So when I was looking at Catalyst winners, I wanted index 1 to get the second item in that list. But here, since we were the first to post to this key, I want index 0, the first item. I also know that I want the first metadata object that's in that array. This array has just one object in it. Could have had more. Okay, so metadata 0. Then what's next? Inside of that, we also want value. And then we want all of the marks. Actually, let's see if the about part works first. Okay, so let's go with value.about. About is just some text. Let's save that. Let's see what that does. Go back here. Go to our playground. Type again. 2021-0302. Cool. There's the data coming right down. So this data is getting to us via the blockchain, right? Through a Dandelion API and here to our page. Now we don't want just the about. We can keep it. I'm using Tailwind here, so H1 is actually not going to style this much differently yet, but eventually it will. So we've got that, and then we're going to do the same thing. Let's just copy that, but without the tags around it. And we want not the about, but the marks, which is an array. So we're going to say marks dot map, and we're going to map them. Call each one I, and for each of those, what do we want to do? Let's see. We want a list of these probably, don't we? So let's actually put some UL tags around this stuff here. Give that a little bit more of a tab. There we go. And so each of these responses, these objects, is going to be a list item. And what's inside each of those objects? A date and a mark, right? So I could do something super simple, and that's all I want to do for now because this video is not about web development. It's just showing you some ideas. Let's just say I.mark. Is that the word I used? Mark, yep. On I.date. How's that? That might be all we have to do. It reloads. 2021-03-02. And that's all there is to it. Okay. Now, I'm going to style this a little bit more offline. So, you know, after you watch this video, if you go back and watch again, you might, by the time you visit the Gimbal Labs playground, you might see that this page looks a little different than this. But the functionality is the same. And if you're wondering how I end up styling it later, you can always go check out the GitHub repository for this site right here. It's just github.com/GimbalLabs. Gimbal Labs, open for you to play around with and yeah, just learn from anything we do here. Okay, so let's go back to the starter kit number 6, check our agenda. Right? So I gave you a little example of what metadata looks like and how to think about it on the blockchain. We did a quick primer on JSON, and there's some links down below where you can read more about JSON if you've never seen it before. We can look at that data via Dandelion. We can look at PostgREST or GraphQL. There's other ways. There's other Dandelions as well, so go make sure to check out the rest of those by clicking here. But we took a quick look at PostgREST and GraphQL. The main point of what I was trying to show you today is just that you can interact with this, all right? But it's up to you to have some ideas. If you really want to go deep, join us here at Gimbal Labs. We're beginning to work on some projects that are going to go much deeper, and we will certainly share via starter kits and other resources everything we do and everything we learn. All right. I showed you how to post some data via Lyft Wallet. The release that you will find at this link is hard-coded for Testnet. All right, so keep that in mind. If you need a mainnet version, come on over to Gimbal Labs and just be really nice to Kyle. And, you know, it's at his discretion. We're going to write up some terms of service around that and make sure we can release it for mainnet soon. And then I gave you that example, and I did some live troubleshooting there. So the video got a little bit long during part 6, and you can certainly, I'll help people fast forward that part, I'm thinking right now, when it comes to that part. But you got to see how the transaction won't even be accepted if the JSON is wrong, which is actually a really nice thing to see. There's some links down below. Encourage you to check out Coding on Chain if you want to go deeper. Check out the Dandelion APIs if you want to build something. Join us at Gimbal Labs so we can start to build. Soon, we're going to be giving a similar starter kit, just about the basics of tokens. We're going to mint some tokens for Cole and Juan, who were the successful champions of starter kit number 5. And then, yeah, just a couple of potential projects for you here, right? Use Lyft to put some metadata on Testnet and then build a front end that consumes it and shows it. And then really interesting right here is this link about, it's called A Journey into Bitcoin Metadata. I'll let you click on it yourself. But this is all about how much you can actually do right on Bitcoin with metadata alone. It's fascinating, and if you're like me, this will probably give you some ideas of something that you want to build on Cardano. All right, this video got long. Yeah, I was daydreaming of keeping it short, but I hope this was helpful. I hope you had some fun, and I hope this inspires you to build and to be in touch. Until next time, thanks for checking out Starter Kit number 6, and see you real soon. Take care.